So, hello, Reg. Welcome to the Protect Accent interview.
Mhm.
Can you please introduce yourself?
So my name's Reg Amwa. I'm a diversity and inclusion advisor for a law firm. Um, I believe I have an accent. I was raised in East London, so I would associate my accent with the area where I grew up. Um, and so I feel sometimes that can be a barrier in certain circumstances, and that's why I've agreed to be part of the survey you're doing.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate your time. And I mean, it's amazing that you agreed to come on, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Can you
Mhm.
please, very briefly, tell us your lived experience of ascentism? Um, have you ever experienced accent-focused bias,
Uh,
especially in the workplace?
well, I had an I had an occasion. Let's see. I suppose almost 20 years ago now, when
Yeah.
so around 1999, and I just sort of recently graduated university, and I one of my first jobs was in the Foreign Office, so the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and I mean, my dream when I was younger, I'd never left the country at that time, apart from going on a student exchange to America. But I always wanted to maybe travel, and ultimately, I thought maybe I could work for the UN. So I didn't know how to get there, but I thought if I worked for like the national government, um, then that would be a way to kind of make my way to the UN, which I thought was, maybe one step above. So anyway, I got the job. So I applied, and it was an entry level sort of junior role, as kind of an assistant to the desk officers, in the diplomatic corps.
Yeah.
And so as I go in the morning, I'll say hi, you're right, how you doing? Just the normal greeting that I might do. And then as I walked away, one of the more senior people in the office, so he was my line manager's line manager.
Mhm.
He, as I walked away, he mimicked me, and the way he mimicked me, it sounded like this: "Oh, what, mutt?" And so as I walked off, I didn't understand. I was thinking, like, why is he's mimicking me? I got that, but the way he made me sound wasn't how I heard my voice in my head, and it was almost as if he mimicked me in a way to make me sound like I couldn't speak properly, or I was in some way like mentally challenged.
Oh, wow.
And I realized was that he associated my accent, and I'm probably speaking because of that. I'm probably speaking more pronounced now, like probably trying to use received pronunciation. But he associated my accent with with being stupid. So he mimicked me in a way that let me know that he thought I was stupid and shouldn't have been there. Because at the time, the Foreign Office was trying to be more diverse, and they were saying that the Foreign Office should reflect the society that it serves.
Can I just
So
that for a minute because this is quite interesting. You were actually born in London. You haven't come from Africa, or you were born in England in London, and that is the accent that people in your area that were born and raised in your area, Islington, that they speak. So how come? I don't understand it. Why would somebody
yeah,
to become?
what you need to understand about Britain or England, England especially, is that it's very class based. So I was born into a working class community.
Yeah,
So and historically, working class people worked in manufacturing or factories where you didn't need a high level of education.
yeah,
But
man job.
and so the kind of job like working for the civil service or working for a corporate, those jobs were reserved for people speak with received pronunciation.
Wow.
And so, as I say, like the way I'm speaking to you, because it's more official, I'm not speaking maybe in the accent that I grew up with. If I'm comfortable around someone, then I'll revert to my my kind of more East End accent.
So did you have to like do elocution because of the stigma that was associated with your accent? Did you do elocution or did you just like?
No, I didn't do elocution lessons. I what I did was in a way, I started to adapt to the circumstance. So when I'm comfortable, then I'm going to maybe speak in a more sort of East London or East End accent, where maybe some of the letters at the end of the words might not be so pronounced.
Yeah.
But when I don't feel comfortable, or I feel that I'm going to be judged, then I will speak more slowly and try and pronounce all the endings of the words. And then I'm thinking more about what I'm saying. So, but in a way, I don't always want to do that, because I know that people associate being being working class or being from, you know, East London as if, you know, you don't know anything. But if I change the way I speak, it hasn't changed what's in my head. So, you know, when I feel comfortable enough, I will speak in, you know, I guess what you'd call the local dialects. And, you know, I might drop the ends off of words or whatever. But, you know, I can still speak intelligently.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is that some accents are more acceptable. So if someone comes over from France or from Germany, they have an accent. But when it's a European accent, because we judge Europeans to be, well, not we, but essentially the world, I suppose, associates Europe with intellect and culture, because we've only been taught about the achievements of Europeans. Then to have a European accent, I'd say more actually a Western European accent is more acceptable, whereas to have to have an African accent or a working class accent in terms of England is less acceptable, because they associate that with being being uneducated or, you know, thick. But that's because we make decisions based on limited information. So when someone meets you, they don't have the time to speak to you and understand, you know, having a conversation with you, understand what you know,
Yeah.
observe what degree you've done. They just go by, okay, you look this way. I don't know many people who are intelligent that look like you, or haven't seen people that look like you in positions of authority, and you also sound like people I would consider uneducated. So therefore, I put you in that category where you shouldn't be here, or if you are here, it's basically because of some kind of social engineering, and therefore you ought to be thankful that you're here. So I will treat you accordingly.
I mean, you've hit the nail right on the head there, which is what triggered the whole project anyway, because people associate having an accent with being stupid, with being all
Mm.
intelligent, and they class you, like you said, like put you in a box because of
Mhm.
your accent. And I'm thinking a lot of people that I know that speak with accents are very, very intelligent people. And you can't help the way you sound
Mhm.
because it's your ID, is what you've always known, is how you talk. It's natural, basically. So
Mm.
it's,
Identity.
it's become a barrier in career progression. And speaking of that, do you think absenteeism is still an issue? You work in a law firm. Do you think it's still an issue in organizations? You don't have to start your own organization, but broadly speaking, do you think absenteeism is still an issue in the workplace today?
Okay, I'm going to speak more broadly rather than
Yeah.
with my law firm per se. Um, but I would say that my experience of it is very much based on our class system. So as I explained before, the corporate world and the civil service, those roles have historically been reserved for people of sort of middle class social background. So people who maybe have paid for education, and have sort of other trappings of middle class lifestyle. So they already established the culture. So middle class culture and corporate culture, they match perfectly. Yeah. So if you come in from outside of that culture, what that means is that then you're automatically an outsider. So then two things happen. Firstly, the people who are there have to almost feel they have to maybe accommodate or make allowances for your the fact that you don't belong to that class, and um, and they may see they may see that you're capable, but in terms of the customer facing side or engagement with clients, they may worry because they think maybe you don't have that polish in terms of, you know, you're not as cultured, you don't, you maybe haven't had the money to engage in cultural pursuits such as skiing or traveling, and so they may fear that you don't have the right cultural capital to be able to connect with clients on the other side of the fence, and therefore that might hamper you in a way. And on the other side, when you come into these sort of roles and you're in the minority because maybe you're an exceptional person from your background or you've had some exceptional intervention to be able to make it in that world, you then have what's termed as imposter syndrome because you feel, oh my God, there's no one like me here. You know, should I really be here? Everyone else, they fit in, they can, you know, they've had all these cultural experiences that I haven't been able to have. And so therefore, maybe, you know, I'm not as good or I'm less than. And so, you know, I would challenge that personally because I feel that if you've broken through the patterns that are set down for you, then in my eyes, you're exceptional. So if I meet someone in my walk of life, say in the corporate world or, you know, wherever I am, where the person's a minority, I'm super interested to kind of know a bit more about their story because I know that there are systemic reasons why they would not normally be there. So in order to subvert those patterns or those systems, there must be something exceptional about you because it's not everyone that can do that. So whereas some people look at it as a, oh, you got lucky, but it's not luck because when things are put in place systematically for you not to be somewhere, for you to subvert that, it's not so much luck. It's more there's something exceptional that took place either within you or you had some kind of exceptional intervention which enabled you to supersede the barriers that have been placed in front of you. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. I mean, I'm getting a lot of insight from what you're saying. But one of the great things about you, Reg, is that you are an equality and diversity officer. So what do you think is the solution to absenteeism in the workplace? How can we stop this from happening? What can organizations do?
You have to any issue around diversity and inclusion requires you to have an honest conversation. And one of the things that we struggle with in England, I would say, or Britain, is that we're not always willing to have an honest conversation. We'll skirt around the issues. We don't want to get, and I think it's almost a middle class thing. We try and use flowery language or lots of words to try and dress things up. So we use words like unconscious bias and microaggression and all these different things. Whereas when we're applying that to a working class person, we can say what's now being termed as the R word. So if I walk into a, so let's say where I live now, Canning Town, yeah, 30 or 40 years ago, it was a very much white working class area. And there was maybe an aversion to people who looked different because it was seen that we were maybe competing with them for public services and for jobs. So when they see us sometimes, you know, they screw up their face, or if we walk into a pub where, you know, they give us a look to say that we're not welcome. And if that happened, then we would say, oh, those people are racist. Whereas now, if I go into a middle class environment and I'm made to feel unwelcome, we won't apply the term racist. We'll say, oh, there's some kind of unconscious bias or microaggression. And, you know, if we're going to kind of not be direct, oh, we're going to worry about offending people, then we don't get to the crux of the issue. We need to be more direct and say, look, if you're judging someone solely on their accent and you're not prepared to accept them, or you're going to deem them as unworthy, then there's something wrong with that. If you're going to look at them because of their color or any other attribute that has nothing to do with their capability and judge them disparagingly, then we need to call that what it is. Yeah. And until we get to that point where we can have an honest conversation and say, you know, this is what's happening and this needs to change, we're going to struggle. But then on the flip side, we need to be able to say to people and be honest and say, look, we understand that difference makes you feel uncomfortable, but these are the benefits of diversity. And until we can articulate that, people are not going to open their doors, because if I'm in an environment where people are like me and I feel very comfortable and I'm doing very well, I need to know, someone needs to articulate to me the benefit of opening up my world and inviting in people that I don't quite understand, or I don't understand their background. Now, for me, excuse me, I can articulate why my identity or my background or my lived experience brings some benefit, especially in the world of diversity and inclusion. Yeah. So I did not previously work in D&I or within HR or even within a law firm. So I was at a disadvantage, but I'm 42, so I've got, let's say, 40 years experience of understanding these sort of issues. And I'd say I've been working since like in my 20s. So let's say 2 decades worth of understanding that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a great fan of unconscious bias. I don't believe in it at all. I mean, what is unconscious about bias? I mean, it's not like you're, passed out on a hospital bed and you don't know what you're saying, and you're being delirious, Okay, let's assume that maybe you are biased and you don't even know that you are. If you perpetrate that action once, it's no longer unconscious. It's come to your forefront.
It's conscious.
That I don't like this, because we're human. We know what we like and we know what we don't like. So if you carry on being biased, how can you call that unconscious bias? It's like putting everything in a box, all what they call microaggressions. And the frustrating thing is that these have negative impact on lives, on individuals.
Yeah, like, mental health. Yeah.
It's just health impact, work-life balance. It has impact on everything. If you're not happy at work, you can hardly be happy at home, because people do take things home from work. So that's why this project is very, very, very important. Organizations need to get to grip with this and realize that this is a serious issue. We're not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. These are issues, especially the issue of absenteeism, that affect lives. It affects employees, production. It affects your happiness, your efficiency, teamwork, cross-cultural communication, what we call intercultural communication. It affects everything. And I'm glad you're on point in all of the things that you've said so far. I don't know. Do you have any more thing to say?
I'm going to drill down, and I think we can talk about accentism, but as I've said, there is no real aversion to a French or German accent these days. The problem we have, I would say, in my opinion, is there's two issues that we don't deal with, and I lay these at the door of the reason for Brexit. It's class and it's race, right? Yeah. Like when we talk about the D&I space, we can talk about gender till the cows come home. We can talk about LGBT, anything you like, but nobody wants to have a conversation about race and class. And if your accent is linked to race or class, then it's a problem. And there is now, especially, times are changing, but it's changing for some people, not for others. So now we have a category called BAME, right? So the BAME kind of encompasses everything. So when even you're talking about race, you're talking about BAME. But we know that the experience for Black people is totally different for Asian and other minority groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Now, because of the rise of China and of India, a Chinese accent or a Indian accent is not viewed the same way because of how China has risen and India have risen. People of that kind of descent or from their diaspora are treated with a different kind of respect now. But unfortunately, Africa hasn't reached that point yet. So if you have an African accent, then you're still going to be classed with that stigma. Even though, you know, being an African, I know how much Africans are really value education. So you could meet someone from Africa, and the amount of degrees and doctorates this person will have, you know, and they may be doing, you know, some entry level job or working as a security guard or whatever it is, and you know, nothing wrong with that. But they will have the qualifications, but they will struggle because people will hear their accent, and straight away they're put in the category of migrant or immigrant, or
Yeah.
you know, and then they're limited. So even though we're talking about accent, if we're being real, we're going to get straight to the heart of it. And
Yeah.
personally, I don't like to beat around the bush.
I mean, sorry to cut in again. Accent is just the root of all discrimination. And you can talk about race all you want, you can talk about gender all you want, unless or until you get to the nitty-gritty, you are not going to prefer any lasting solution to the issue of racism or classism, you know. So there needs to be a very effective way of tackling these issues, which is why accentism is a big case. And you know, talking about accentism, you are a man, you are black, you are British, born in England. How does your accent impact on your intersectionality? You know, because you're not just black, you're British, you're a man, you've got an accent.
Yes.
How does that come into
So
play?
the way intersectionality works is that I am in a space where it's very female orientated because the gender is the main topic. So
Yeah,
within the D&I world, I'm in the minority, not just because I'm black, but because I'm a man. Yeah. And so because of the focus on gender, what happens is that they miss the intersectionality. So someone who follows maybe the logic of feminism would believe in a patriarchy and would suggest that just by nature of my gender that I am privileged. But they're missing the fact that I'm black, right? So being black puts me in a different bracket, and then as a man, and so the difficulties that a black male faces from the age of being young to getting into some professional work is totally different to a white woman or even a black woman, right? So if I'm in the corporate world, I see, especially within like law, I see a lot more black women when I'm doing work experience schemes like I was doing this week. You know, I had a lot, very few boys compared to the girls. So maybe, let's say, less than a third were boys out of the cohort, and that's because in a working class environment, boys are socialized in a different way,
yeah,
and also the expectations are different. So they find it harder than the girls do, and so in a way, boys are disadvantaged. And then if you go into an industry or a sector like I have, where it's more about people and you know culture and things like that, or being more social, then you tend to find more women. So as a man, again, you're in the minority. So you have to look at things. It's a lot more nuanced, but because I suppose the space or the conversation is very much dominated by I suppose individuals who are maybe white, female, and middle class. They'll have a certain perspective, and then they'll have gaps in that perspective because they don't have a lived experience of what it's like to be maybe working class, black, and male. And so that was the reason why I put myself forward to get into the D&I world, because I realized that I would go to events because I was always interested in the topic
yeah.
because of things I'd experienced in my sort of working life and life in general. And I would kind of see the pattern, and I would see, hang on, how are these people going to solve this issue when there's no one, I'm the only one in the room that's like me, you know, so
Yeah.
there's going to be a big gap. So then I got myself into this role so that I could help resolve some of these issues.
Right. Thank you, Reg. You've given so much insight to the topic and you've done justice to it. And at this point, I'd like to wrap up the interview because I would not want to take your time any